Hello and welcome to this case study video for Greening the City. And today's video will be about Beijing in China. And some of the issues that we'll be briefly introducing are issues of scale, spatial form and development. And each of these ideas is very pertinent in Beijing simply because of the geographical scale of the city and its expansion rate, the number of people who live within Beijing, and the way in which urban greening and green infrastructure has both a legacy of existence in the city, be it through the more imperial sort of legacy of summer palaces or the Forbidden City, and also more recent articulations of urban greening ideas that provide almost a more compartmentalized or modular approach to understanding the physical landscape of the city. So in terms of the city itself, the city is expanding and the spatial footprint is one of rings. So we have these rings at the highways that go out from the city centre. The original ring was around the Forbidden City, so in the centre of the city. I think we're now up to 6 or 7 different ring roads. But what this does is that this pushes the city out in all directions. And this is quite problematic, as to the northwest of the city is a desert, and a lot of the prevailing winds come into the city that way. So the climate is influenced quite dramatically by the wind and by the physical location of Beijing. And because of this, it has historically had quite a lot of forestry around the city to protect it from these winds. But as the city has expanded, a lot of these forests have been cut down, and we now start to see issues of desertification coming into the outer outskirts of Beijing itself. But also the climate and the built form have this synergistic understanding and relationship, as the Summer Palace, which is located in the northwest of Beijing, was created and built in this location to get those prevailing winds coming from the northwest to provide respite from the heat of the summer in Beijing. So, and in the middle image here, we have the forest park at the Beijing Olympic Park. So again, trying to provide an urban forest in the centre of the city to moderate the climate, to allow people to engage with the natural environment in a way that is good for their health and their well-being, and it's a direct comparison to the heavily urbanised parts of many bits of Beijing. And one of the aspects of this is that there's a culture of bringing historical understandings of landscape into urban development. So in Jinshan Park here, just north of the Forbidden City, they have a lot of Chinese landscape paintings around the park itself. And this is almost a reminder, a nostalgic understanding of the way in which landscapes, and particularly in terms of the sky, rocks, water and mountains, and even people, say here you have a picture of a building, are part of the understanding of what makes a landscape. And in Jinshan Park, there are a number of reminders of these different ideas. So one is that it's on a hill, so you actually have the elevation and the changing climate as you go up there. A second idea is the use of trees, and both in terms of ornamentation and in screening. So you have these different species and different layers that people can engage with, but also you have quite a strong relationship between people and the landscape, so it's not an exclusionary understanding of landscape. So this contemporary design, and this picture here on the right is from the middle layer of the park, so not quite at the top of the pagoda, but it does allow people to move around the area. There are different levels, there are places to sit, places to actually get views of the city, and it overlooks other forests and other parts of water bodies as well. So the use of green infrastructure here has been one of shaping the way that people move around this park, but also trying to link to some of those historical understandings of landscape architecture in Chinese culture, which are still very prominent across the city. We also can think about the way in which the scale of investment in GI is being used to frame some of the locations, some of the investments. So on Tsinghua University campus, you have the use of water and canals framed by footpaths and framed by boulevards of trees. In this case, the sort of the fall colours and the photo opportunities that can be had there. And people come and engage with these locations because they are historically bound to people's understanding of high quality environments. And so, although there might be a monocultural understanding of the types of trees on certain parts of the campus, they do have a very, very strong socio-cultural value to people from all over Beijing, but also all over the city. And again, the use of stonework and the use of water on campus means that there are these different understandings of urban greening and how the landscape can be used to facilitate an engagement with both the present and the physical environment, but also the past as well. On a different sort of bent is the very manicured and structured nature of the Olympic Park in Beijing, where a lot of formalized spaces have been developed into, so you have a lot more people using the space at one time. There's a regimentation to the management and how things are laid out. So although there is a diversity in the species and in the design, there actually is a regularity to it, which is somewhat unsettling, because you sort of move through part 1 to part 2 to part 3, and only when you get to the very north of the site you start to get this variation with the forest park. So in terms of controlling people and controlling the experience, the Olympic Park is very good, but in terms of that diversity or that variation in ecosystem services, maybe less so. And one of the other things that we're starting to see more of in Beijing and China more generally is the way in which space can be used to invest in urban greening and urban forestry and green infrastructure, and particularly those spaces which might have been overlooked previously. So the centre picture there, so underneath the North Fourth Ring Road in the west of the city, has become a small urban park in an area that might have been used for car parking previously. Now, it might not look like much, but it is has quite a substantial impact in terms of the climate and the use of those locations in the middle of the afternoon when it might be 30+ degrees. It's also, despite being under a motorway and next to an 8-lane highway, actually very, very quiet. So in terms of offering a place for tranquility, there's an incredibly high value in that particular location. Also across Beijing, there are these very small public squares, and this one's outside Tsinghua Science Park. So they're almost, again, the modularity of using urban greening to have a very discrete location which services a very immediate surrounding, in this case office buildings and residential areas. And I think that's very important in Beijing, because although they have these very large city-scale sites, like the Forbidden City, the Olympic Park, the Summer Palace, they are spread out quite a lot over the spatial footprint of the city. So having these neighbourhood scale sites is really important to provide access to nature, but also access to that variation of ecological variety over the course of the year. And these pictures were taken in November, so that's why you've got the fall colour in there. And I think finally, just the way in which China is approaching urban greening and making links between climate change, air quality, flood mitigation, but also quality of life and quality of place is quite interesting. And even at the airport, when you're waiting for the train to go to the departure lounges, they have pictures, in this case from the Bosco Verticale in Milan, to sort of say we have to act now in terms of investing in green infrastructure. Now, you might see this as being quite cynical in terms of promoting real estate speculation and higher returns on investment values, or you might see it as a more strategic approach to piece by piece betterment in terms of the physical quality of the landscape and its added value in terms of addressing climate change, particularly from pollution and exhaust fumes from the excessive traffic in Beijing. So across China, in Beijing in particular, these notions of scale and of focus and the delivery of a number of different benefits in one location, and also the use of very big sites, but also the local sites to try and provide something which people can use every day and then maybe from their destination, is part of that green infrastructure mix. And it provides a very interesting sort of grounding for looking at what can be done and what can be done effectively and what might need a little bit more improvement. So thank you for watching, and I hope you found that useful.